Most women are taught to be endlessly patient, endlessly forgiving, endlessly available. But patience without discernment is not a virtue, it's a slow self-betrayal. Forgiveness without boundaries is not compassion, it's a silent invitation for exploitation. And availability without standards is not love, it's a stage on which others rehearse their dramas while you shrink into the background of your own life. Have you ever wondered why, no matter how much you give, some people only take more? The truth is simple, though rarely spoken. Not everyone deserves your time. Jung once said that people don't meet by accident, but as mirrors of our unconscious selves. Yet, if every mirror reflects a distortion, how long before you begin to mistake their shadows for your face? Time is the most sacred currency you possess, and every person you allow into your life is an investor or a thief. The Stoics remind us that wealth is not measured by what we own, but by what we refuse to squander. Seneca wrote that people guard their money fiercely, yet spend their lives carelessly, as if the hours could be replenished. The greatest theft is not of gold or silver, but of your unreturned energy, your misplaced devotion, your silent compromises. There are people who approach you like storms, thrilling at first glance, but devastating once they've touched down. They feed on your empathy the way fire consumes oxygen, leaving you breathless and hollowed. These are the emotional vampires, cloaked in charm, carrying wounds they never intend to heal. They are not companions, but whirlpools, and if you confuse their intensity with intimacy, you will drown in waters that were never yours to swim. And then there are the manipulators, masters of subtlety, pulling strings you didn't even know. You heard Jung would call them puppeteers of the shadow, embodiments of control, disguising domination as care. You'll recognize them not by their words, but by how small you feel in their presence. They do not ask you to shrink, yet you do, as though your own instincts have been turned against you. Their power lies not in strength, but in convincing you to surrender yours. There are also the perpetual victims, those who weave tragedy into identity, carrying their wounds like medals of honor. To listen to them is to step into an endless labyrinth, where every path circles back to despair. Compassion may draw you in, but compassion without boundaries is martyrdom. To rescue those who refuse to stand is to chain yourself to their inertia. You cannot be the healer of those who worship their wounds more than they desire wholeness. Beware. 2. The envious ones, those whose eyes darken at your joy, whose smiles stiffen when you rise. They are the hidden saboteurs, praising you with one hand while preparing to undercut you with the other. Their envy is a confession of their own unclaimed power, yet they would rather see your flame dim than kindle their own. Marcus Aurelius warned against seeking validation from those enslaved by jealousy, for envy is the clearest proof of a soul unwilling to meet itself. But perhaps the most insidious are the indifferent, the ones who neither wound nor heal, who occupy space without presence, who waste your time not by destruction but by inertia. Indifference is not neutral. It's the slow erosion of vitality, the suffocation of potential under the weight of apathy. To give your energy to someone who cannot care is to water a stone and expect a garden to bloom at some point. A woman must awaken to the recognition that her worth is not negotiable, and her time is not a public commodity. Jung spoke of individuation, the journey of becoming whole, of integrating the fragments of self that others try to scatter. Part of this journey is the ruthless clarity to say no, to recognize who belongs in your orbit and who only drains. Your light, this is not cruelty, this is alignment. For every minute you spend with those unworthy of your presence is a minute stolen from the people and dreams that could have nourished you. And when you finally understand this, when you step into the role of chooser instead of chaser, your life no longer revolves around who wants you, but around who deserves you. So ask yourself, who around you is a mirror reflecting your hidden power, and who is a mask concealing their hunger? Who helps you rise into your fullest archetype, and who thrives only when you shrink? To discern this is not arrogance, but liberation. It is the art of no longer wasting your sacred hours on those who would never honor them. There comes a moment in everyone's life when silence weighs heavier than words, when the subtle tug of someone's presence feels like a leash more than an embrace. It is here that the psyche whispers a truth often buried beneath social conditioning. Not everyone who reaches for you deserves to hold you. To remain entangled with the wrong souls is to betray the unfolding of your own myth. Jung reminded us that the shadow we ignore does not disappear. It simply takes human form in the people we attract and tolerate. The ones who drain you, belittle you, or leave you questioning your own worth are often the echoes of inner work left unfinished. The liar is one such echo, wearing masks not just to deceive you, but to avoid themselves. To be in the orbit of someone dishonest is to live in a theater where the script changes by the hour. Their words and actions never align, and in the dissonance you begin to doubt your own intuition. Lies corrode, trust like rust devours metal, slowly weakening the structure until collapse is inevitable. A liar does not merely betray you, they enlist you as an accomplice in betraying yourself, teaching you to distrust your own instincts in order to preserve the illusion. Then there are the narcissists, whose entire being orbits around the gravitational pull of their own ego. They are actors in search of mirrors, not partners. To them, you are not a woman of depth and power, but a stage light illuminating their performance. The tragedy of engaging with them lies not in their grandiosity, but in how you begin to dim yourself, shrinking your brilliance so they can shine brighter. Jung would see them as a distorted archetype of the king or queen, rulers without kingdoms, clinging to power by convincing others to bow. You may confuse their confidence with strength, but true strength is humble, and theirs is nothing but vanity dressed in armor. Equally dangerous are the chronic complainers who disguise themselves as friends while slowly eroding your vitality with endless grievances. They do not seek solutions, only audiences. With every sigh and lament, they plant seeds of helplessness, until even your victories feel small under the weight of their discontent. Stoic wisdom teaches that the quality of one's mind is shaped by the company one keeps. To share too much space with perpetual negativity is to allow your psyche to be shaped by despair. Their presence whispers a false philosophy, that life is suffering without redemption. But you know better. Life is suffering, yes, but it is also the triumph over it. Some people do not shout their unworthiness. They reveal it through absence, through the uncanny art of never being there when you need them most. These are the unreliable, the ones who promise the moon but vanish when darkness falls. They drain not with cruelty but with inconsistency, eroding the foundation of trust until you live in a constant state of anticipation, waiting for shoes that never drop, waiting for hearts that never stay. Their inconsistency is not circumstantial, it is character. And to tether your worth to such a person is to build your house on quicksand, watching your stability sink no matter how much effort you pour into holding it together. In all of these dynamics, the liar, the narcissist, the complainer, the unreliable, the deeper question is not why they act as they do, but why you tolerate them. Here lies the turning point. To ask what within you resonates with their frequency, what part of your own shadow welcomes their presence. Jung said that what we do not make conscious will return as fate. Perhaps it is the child in you who learned that love must be earned by endurance. Perhaps it is the maiden archetype still seeking validation in the eyes of those who never truly see her. But when you step into the sovereign archetype, the queen, the warrior, the priestess, you begin to recognize that enduring is not loving and waiting is not loyalty. You begin to discern that your soul's evolution depends not on how much you can give to others, but on how fiercely you can protect your own time, your own light, your own sacred becoming. Those who lie, manipulate, drain, or abandon are not merely bad people. They are symbols, invitations for you to choose differently, to set boundaries where once there were none, to honor yourself as fiercely as you once honored them. Every moment you reclaim from the unworthy becomes a seed of power planted in your own soil. And though the process may feel ruthless, it is not cruelty. It is alignment with truth. In walking away, you are not rejecting them as people, but refusing the role you once played in your own diminishment. That is the alchemy of empowerment, transforming wasted time into wisdom, turning broken trust into unshakable discernment, and finally stepping into relationships where mutual respect is the currency. And so, the question lingers like a quiet challenge. Who in your life is worthy of the hours you will never get back? Who has earned the privilege of your time, and who has merely borrowed it without intention to repay? When you answer with clarity, you begin to live not in reaction to others, but in alignment with yourself. That is the beginning of sovereignty. There is a cruel paradox in human connection. The very people who take the most from you are often the ones you feel most compelled to keep. Trauma bonds, unconscious patterns, unfinished stories from childhood. They whisper to you that suffering is love, that longing is loyalty, that emptiness is intimacy. Yet in truth, these attachments are illusions, born from wounds rather than wisdom. Jung would say the psyche repeats what it has not resolved, summoning the same archetypes in different masks until you awaken. And so you meet the same type of soul in a different face, until finally you learn to break the spell. Consider the opportunist. They appear when it serves them, speak sweetly when they want something, and vanish when your needs arise. They do not see you as a sovereign being, but as a resource, a well from which they drink without ever offering water in return. They thrive on your generosity, but recoil at your boundaries. If you step back, you notice the pattern. Your kindness becomes their currency, and every act of giving depletes you while enriching them. To remain in their orbit is to become a vessel drained to dryness, mistaking depletion for devotion. There is also the critic, cloaked in false concern, who chips away at your confidence under the guise of just being honest. They do not uplift, they dissect, comparing your light to others, reminding you of flaws you already know, and inventing ones you do not. Jung saw criticism as projection, the parts of themselves they refuse to face. They hurl at you like stones. To endure this is to live in a hall of distorted mirrors, where your reflection bends into inadequacy. But you are not their projection. You are not the sum of their unhealed contempt. And once you see that, their words lose the venom they once carried. The self-absorbed belong in this gallery of time thieves, as well not the flamboyant narcissists, but the quieter egocentrics who listen only long enough to redirect the conversation back to themselves. Every joy you share becomes a springboard for their story. Every wound you reveal a prompt for their own. You walk away from conversations emptier than when you entered, wondering if you were truly heard at all. Connection with them is not mutual. It is parasitic, disguised as companionship. To remain is to live half-voiced, teaching your soul to settle for echoes instead of resonance. And beware the controllers, the subtle tyrants who dictate who you see, what you wear, how you spend your time. They present control as protection, manipulation as guidance, dominance as love. But true love does not diminish, it expands. These people are the shadow archetypes of the patriarch or matriarch gone wrong, seeking not partnership but possession. The longer you remain, the smaller your world becomes, until one day you find that your life no longer belongs to you. To leave them is not rebellion but reclamation, the sovereign act of retrieving your stolen autonomy. It is important to see that none of these types exist in isolation. They blend, overlap, intertwine, sometimes inhabiting one person in many. Disguises. An opportunist can also be a liar. A critic can wear the mask of a victim. A controller may cloak themselves in victimhood to bind you with guilt. This is why discernment is not just skill, but survival. The capacity to read the archetypal language beneath the mask. The woman who fails to see this repeats the cycle. The woman who does sees the pattern and breaks it. And yet, the greatest danger is not simply in them, it is in you. It is in the part of you that confuses endurance with strength, silence with loyalty, sacrifice with love. It is in the shadow self that believes attention, even negative attention, is proof of value. The Stoics warned that attachment to the wrong things breeds misery, and attachment to the wrong people is the most subtle misery of all. For every hour you spend tangled in the wrong story, you postpone the chapter where you finally step into your own. But imagine, instead, a life where your time is guarded like sacred ground, where entry requires reverence. Imagine saying no, not from bitterness, but from clarity, no longer shackled by the fear of being alone. For in truth, solitude is not the absence of love, but the space in which authentic love can finally appear. Jungian individuation requires aloneness, the descent into self, the integration of shadow, the recognition of your own wholeness apart from others. Only then can you meet another, not as a fragment seeking completion, but as a whole offering presence. And when you rise into that wholeness, you no longer tolerate the opportunist, the critic, the self-absorbed, the controller. They may still appear as they always do, but they no longer penetrate your field. Their tactics no longer bind you, because you have made conscious what was once unconscious. Your time is holy, your worth is inherent, and your energy is not a gift to be squandered. In that moment, you are not just avoiding those who aren't worth your time, you are transcending them. The world shifts when you do. What once drained you now repels you. What once entangled you now appears transparent. And suddenly, the relationships that remain are not chains but wings, not prisons but sanctuaries. This is the turning point. To realize that who you allow into your time shapes not just your days, but your destiny. To understand why these patterns are so magnetic, one must confront the hidden architecture of the psyche. Every woman carries within her a constellation of archetypes. The nurturer, the lover, the warrior, the queen. Each archetype has both light and shadow, and when unbalanced, the shadow seeks out relationships that mirror its wounds. The nurturer, unchecked, becomes the martyr who clings to the broken. The lover, unhealed, becomes addicted to the unavailable. The warrior, unintegrated, chooses battles that only drain her spirit. The queen, asleep, allows jesters and beggars to occupy her throne. It is not that these people, the liars, the manipulators, the narcissists, hold true power over you. It is that they awaken dormant stories within you, scripts you once believed necessary for survival. If you grew up learning that love was conditional, you may find yourself tolerating the critic. If chaos was the rhythm of your home, the unreliable feels strangely familiar. If absence defined your earliest attachments, the indifferent becomes intoxicating in its resemblance. These aren't coincidences. They are the psyche's attempt at repetition, a desperate but misguided effort to rewrite the story by replaying it. But here lies the paradox. You cannot rewrite a story by reliving it. You can only transform it by refusing to play the role assigned to you. This is where individuation begins, the radical act of withdrawing projections, of recognizing that the chaos in your relationships is not fate but pattern. Jung believed that the unconscious directs our lives until we make it conscious. Every person you tolerate who diminishes you is not an accident but a lesson, a reflection of something within you that demands recognition. They are teachers, though cruel ones, guiding you back to your own neglected boundaries. The Stoics, too, remind us that power lies not in controlling others, but in controlling our responses. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. Likewise, your soul becomes dyed with the company you keep. Spend enough time with the envious, and you begin to doubt your light. Spend enough time with the victims, and you begin to drown in helplessness. Spend enough time with the indifferent, and you begin to question whether passion was ever real. The greatest discipline is not ascetic withdrawal from the world, but discerning whose presence nourishes your essence and whose erodes it. Consider how often women are taught to endure rather than to choose. Endure the unreliable friend. Endure the overbearing partner. Endure the relative who criticizes under the mask of care. Endurance becomes confused with love, and loyalty mistaken for sacrifice. But endurance without discernment is self-abandonment in disguise. A queen does not endure the company of thieves in her court. She does not rationalize betrayal as just their nature. She acts swiftly and without apology, because her time is not a public playground, it is the sacred architecture of her destiny. This truth, however, often arrives with pain. Walking away is rarely gentle. It rips at attachments, shatters illusions, and confronts the deepest fear of all. That solitude may reveal how much of your worth you once outsourced to others. But solitude is not a void, it is a mirror. It reflects back everything you ignored while busy catering to the unworthy. It shows you the shadow you once projected, and it offers you a choice. Integrate it or repeat it. Only by choosing the former can you step into the fullness of your power. And when you do, something extraordinary happens. You begin to notice that those who once captivated you no longer hold sway. The narcissist who once dazzled you with confidence now appears transparent, their bravado hollow. The manipulator who once controlled you now seems clumsy, their strings obvious. The indifferent, the unreliable, the critic, they all fade into irrelevance, not because they have changed, but because you have. The spell breaks when you awaken to the truth that your worth has never been contingent on their recognition. This is the alchemy of boundaries, turning pain into clarity, turning loss into liberation. Every time you withdraw your energy from the unworthy, you redirect it back into yourself. You water your own soil. You tend your own fire. You call back every fragment of your soul you once scattered among those who could not cherish it, and slowly you become whole. Not because you found better people, but because you became the woman who no longer entertains the ones who aren't worth her time. The world will not celebrate this awakening. Many will call you cold, detached, selfish. But these accusations are the final chains of control. They are the desperate cries of those who once feasted on your compliance. Pay them no mind. The Stoics remind us that insult is powerless unless accepted. Jung reminds us that individuation is lonely, but only because it separates you from the unconscious herd. And your own heart reminds you that solitude chosen is infinitely more empowering than company endured. So, ask yourself again, who takes more than they give? Who dims your flame instead of feeding it? Who demands endurance but offers no reciprocity? And more importantly, why have you tolerated it until now? The answers will not only set you free, they will crown you sovereign over your own life. There is a sacred violence in reclaiming your time, a cutting away that feels ruthless yet necessary, like pruning a tree so that it may finally bear fruit. The psyche resists at first. After all, every bond, even toxic ones, carries a strange familiarity. But you are not here to live within the confines of familiarity. You are here to evolve, to individuate, to become whole. And evolution demands sacrifice, the sacrifice of old patterns, of false loyalties, of those who prove again and again that they cannot meet you where you stand. The greatest theft in life is not the money you lose, but the years you hand over to people who were never meant to keep them. Think of the woman who spends a decade waiting for a man who never chooses her, mistaking his inconsistency for mystery, or the friend who answers every midnight call from the victim archetype, soothing the same stories for years, only to realize her own dreams were postponed in the process. These stories are not rare, they are epidemic. They are what happens when empathy is unguarded, when the heart mistakes endurance for love. But when you awaken, the lens shifts. You see clearly that the indifferent were not neutral but erosive, that the critic's words were projections, that the narcissist's charm was only camouflage for emptiness. You stop asking why they are this way and start asking why you tolerated it. That is the pivot point. The moment the victim within dies and the sovereign is born. Jung said that freedom is not achieved by denying the shadow, but by integrating it. And in that integration, you no longer attract what wounds you, because you no longer need it to complete your story. The Stoics would nod in agreement. They taught that suffering arises not from events themselves, but from our interpretation of them. A manipulator has no true power if you refuse to dance to their tune. An opportunist cannot drain you if you close the well. The critic cannot wound you if you no longer mistake their voice for truth. Their power was never inherent, it was borrowed, and it was borrowed from your own lack of boundaries. Once you see this, you realize that every boundary is not a wall but a mirror. It shows the world how you now treat yourself. There is beauty in this realization, but also grief. For in walking away, you are not just losing people, you are losing versions of yourself. The woman who tolerated, who justified, who compromised. You bury her gently, knowing she kept you alive when you knew no better. And then you rise, carrying her lessons without her chains. This grief is not weakness, it is initiation. Every mythic heroine must descend before she ascends. Every queen must know betrayal before she rules with clarity. Your grief is the threshold between the life you endured and the life you are about to claim. What follows is liberation, so quiet it feels foreign at first. You no longer wake with dread at unread messages or unreturned calls. You no longer feel the compulsion to explain yourself to those committed to misunderstanding you. You no longer water stones, hoping for a garden. Instead, your energy gathers inward, like rivers flowing back to their source, until you feel whole again. And in that wholeness, you attract differently, not out of hunger, but out of sovereignty. The world itself begins to shift in response. Those who once demanded your time sense the change and recoil, for your new boundaries are walls they cannot climb. But others, those who honor you, those who bring reciprocity, those who shine without dimming you, are drawn closer, as if your wholeness acts as a magnet. This is the paradox. When you no longer tolerate those unworthy of your time, you make space for those who will cherish it. And so the circle closes. The liars, the narcissists, the critics, the indifferent, they no longer define your world. They are chapters you have read, understood, and outgrown. Their purpose was not to love you, but to teach you discernment. Their gift was not joy, but clarity. And the clarity they leave behind is more valuable than any affection they pretended to offer. The woman who embraces this truth is no longer chained to external validation. She no longer confuses attention with love or suffering with loyalty. She becomes her own validation, her own sanctuary, her own compass. And from that place, she chooses, not out of fear, not out of scarcity, but out of sovereignty. For the final truth is this: you do not rise by adding more people to your life. You rise by subtracting the ones who are not worth your time. The woman who knows her worth doesn't chase. She chooses.